Hi, everybody. Welcome to Mastering B2B Sales Methodologies in 2024. My name is Sami Rajab, and I'm the CEO of ValueOrbit. And I'm very excited to dive into today's topic, which will be the sales and customer success methodologies. We're going to talk about SaaS in particular, but 90% of what we're going to talk about will apply to other industries. So today I'm very happy to have Gary Stewart, our guest. Very excited. I've had a lot of chats with Gary on the methodologies. He has a very deep knowledge, and I'm sure that he's going to contribute a lot and add a lot to the audience today. So welcome, Gary. And can you introduce yourself?
Yeah, sure. First of all, thank you for having me, Sami. It's always lovely to talk to you, and I love talking about sales methodologies in particular. So yeah, a little bit about myself. So 15 years of alternating between enterprise software sales and enablement. I have like most salespeople, you get into a sales motion, and my favorite way of working, and mainly because it helped me actually drive revenue and get more results, were really around three methodologies. One was around applying the MEDDPICC, which is really around like, what do I need to do as I manage a deal through the sales process? And then there was the actual conversation. So how can I get my differentiated capabilities into the customer's mind, and that for them to go, okay, this is actually something that I absolutely need. So that's the force management, command of message, but also storytelling, right, which is actually interwoven throughout both, because storytelling in sales, it works on an emotional level, but also from a complexity point of view, to make really complex offerings, to make them just much more digestible.
So Gary and I have a lot in common, but we worked in the past for the same company, Oracle. Gary was in enablement, and I was in the consultative sales with the insight and customer strategy. And what's interesting is that to see the view or the maturity of the companies from enterprise to kind of startups or early growth, late growth, etc. So that's a segue to our first topic in the discussion, which is I know that startups until 10 million probably are in the initial phase. Then gradually they move to the scale phase until probably 30, 40, 50 million. And then to the growth phase, and then achieve the enterprise maturity. And the needs are different. So my first question to you, Gary, is who needs a methodology? And before that, what's your definition of a methodology?
So I suppose my definition of a methodology is really about action, how we actually approach what we do, and to do that in a systematic way, in a repeatable way, so that we have a framework that we can improve, but also a framework that we as a team can communicate on using a common language. So it's about that commonality, but also about having just that framework that you can improve, right? So you have something that you can consistently refer to, but also action, Sami, right? So it's also any methodology should be action focused, right? So
okay. And I'll kind of talk a little bit about the stages of maturity. When do we need a methodology? So when I started ValueOrbit, which the mission is to drive predictable and repeatable revenue with AI, And automating methodologies and forecasts is the heart of ValueOrbit. So when I started, I said, I'm a small company, I'm a small startup. I will start by addressing companies that are in the 5 million, 10 million, small companies, and then move forward. And then I hit the wall. And after 2 years, I understood one thing is that a startup does not need a methodology before 10 million revenue. So the time that is spent into structuring things should be spent into selling things. And the problem, the issue is that the product market fit is still not there, and the maturity is not there. So there is nothing to document that you can follow. But reaching the scale and the growth is a different journey. So this is why. What's your point of view on this? When do you need to start, and how do you gradually evolve?
Well, so again, in terms of the methodology, as you are in that kind of, forming the business stage, getting the value proposition, crystallizing that, you're at a different phase, right? So it's really about communicating, understanding where you can add value for your customers. And, it's going to be something that is quite organic, and you'll kind of have, lots of conversations rather than actually going by a methodology. But then as you start to crystallize your message and you start to scale and you start to have multiple people, maybe even partners, talk about it, having a methodology. So again, I actually, there's two kind of primary methodologies that I kind of go by in terms of scaling. Again, one of them being MedPick and the other one being that value-based conversation from Force Management. And really to have a methodology that you can have an understanding of, okay, when I talk to my customers, I understand now at this point, I've done the storming stage, I understand what their pain points are. So how am I going to have a conversation that enables me to get my differentiated solution that solves those pain points? How can I actually get my customer to open up about that? And then as I've done that and the customer has articulated how the particular pain point is impacting them, to then loop back and articulate how is it that I, for example, as ValueOrbit, can actually, through my solution, offer value, so be that more revenue, reducing the cost, or mitigating risk.
I got it. So what is let's take the customer journey. Is like you have the awareness, the consideration, the decision, the closing, and then the success part. And I guess that the first step of defining a methodology is to define your sales process, which is, I guess, the standard one for the SaaS companies is prospecting. You do your discovery demo, you do your solution, your negotiation, and then you close. And then the final part, which is now becoming the most important part, is the renewal and expansion, because of the current macroeconomic environment. Companies are hitting the wall and they're struggling to work on the renewal and expansion. So my question to you is that now, if we take the scale, let's talk first about the scale phase. What is the first sales process or the first methodology we need to apply in which phase of the sales process? So as a startup, I'm reaching 10 million, I raised 20 million, and I would like to accelerate. What should I do? Well,
if you're looking at so acquisition, right? So new logo acquisition, your prospecting methodology and your cadence around that. So what is it that you're actually doing to actually build up your initial pipeline is going to be very important. Then as you move from that prospecting stage into, okay, I've actually, my message has resonated with some customers, then I need to have a framework under which I can have a conversation, right? And that, we call that the value-based conversation, right? Which again is about getting the customer to articulate where they have pain, and then for you to be able to loop back on that and say, well, look, based on what you're actually looking for, what we can do is we can provide you capabilities that will do this. And by the way, how we do it differently, or maybe even arrogantly better than the competition, this is how we can actually help you achieve that. And then, so again, it's about having that conversation. And then I kind of look at the final stage. So if the customer's gone, yes, I want this, that's going to provide a lot of value. Well, then it really comes into, you need to have the skills to effectively negotiate an agreement between you and your customer that is that works for both parties. So prospecting, the conversation, which includes, of course, the discovery, the articulation or the presentation, and then finally the negotiation. So as you move into that stage where you're in that growth mode, you need to you need to be very skilled at all of those stages. Prospecting initially, especially just for growth, it gets a little bit easier as you get growth, as you get proof points. But really, then that conversation that happens at the middle of the funnel around understanding how you can add value, and then articulating that, and again then coming to the negotiation stage at the end.
I think it's very logical. We start with the prospecting, and then we move to how we're going to get this value conversations during the discovery, and then to the negotiation, which is in the closing part. But let's say, and I think it's clear that startups cannot, for example, in this case, cannot really define their methodologies if they don't have a clear idea on their ICP, ideal customer profile, and what are the companies they're after and the personas that they're really targeting. So that's one. And is the methodology really tools agnostic, or for example, for a company, I would say in the methodology, these are the activities that I'm gonna do. This is my messaging, and this is how I'm gonna use the tools. That's something that always I think it's always struck my curiosity.
Well, that's a very good point, Sami, because as much as I am a believer in the importance of enablement and coaching, the tools to create the stickiness and to create value at every level of the organization, be that at the operational side. So if you're a salesperson, you need to get value out of it. So yes, it's great you've had the training, but how are you then going to continue to get value out of it? The tools should provide you, with a great way of not only logging, but also retrieving and perhaps some nice visualization of where you are in a particular deal. But then also those tools should be able to take that information for individual deals or at scale, and to be able to give more senior levels of the organization a view that makes them feel comfortable of, yes, look, in terms of our go-to-market, we are comfortable with where we're at, or maybe we need to do some some tweaking. But the tools are absolutely key to that. The training is the kind of almost like the start of the process. The coaching is then a continuation of that, but the tools are going to give you the stickiness. So that's really going to make it embed the methodologies within your organization.
And what we've seen is that the first tool that was used for the methodologies part is the CRM. Mm-hmm. But most of the CRM system were not really compatible with the, let's say, the enablement and coaching motions. And now we see an explosion of enablement specific or coaching specific tools. So how do you see this evolution? And now we're seeing a lot, and at ValueOrbit, since that it's also a coaching tool, we're working a lot into AI and how AI can enable the sales. How can they coach them on the next level? And now in the last year, there is an explosion of generative AI. And this is, my feeling is that it's transforming the enablement side and the adoption of methodologies. So it's a big leap, and probably this is what will unlock the methodology. What's your point of view on this?
Yeah, I think it's again. I love kind of just thinking about, and it is something I've been thinking about in terms of, what is the impact of AI going to really be on sales? And I think it might have been something that we spoke about before, where it's really going to, first of all, for the right methodologies, it's going to make sure that the salesperson has the right insights to be able to use based on using that methodology. So for example, if you're applying something like MedPick, or you're applying something like the command of message, what's going to happen is that the information and the elements of the conversation where you're gathering that information, the AI is going to be able to aggregate that and then give you insights in terms of, they used to talk about next step. I look at it more as the next meeting, as in, okay, well, what are the elements that you need to really focus on in terms of your next steps? So in terms of your next steps in relation to your next meeting, right? So it's not just, the next step, which is often just a singular. It's really around, okay, what do I need to, where am I maybe not as strong as I should be in relation to, for example, the economic buyer, or my confidence in the champion. So the AI will be able to give you those insights, and as a salesperson, it'll be almost like your angel or your coach on your shoulder. That's going to help you really take you as a salesperson to the next level. So I think AI is going to be huge in that way. And again, what we're going to see is the really good methodologies, the methodologies that really focus on what adds value to the customer, and based on where a conversation is at, in terms of not just quantitative but also qualitative data. What is it that you need to do to really drive that opportunity to close? Where are the threats? What do you need to manage? AI is going to be able to give you all of those insights. So it's going to be very exciting.
That's I fully agree. So I'm a CRO of, let's suppose that I'm a CRO of a company that has between 10 and 50 million. And now I have problem with my margin, and I have problem with my growth. And I will need to increase the efficiency and productivity of the team. And then the CEO will tell me, you need to put the kind of a factory, you need to ensure consistency in the way you execute, and repeatability. So we need to move from the ad hoc to the factory of, let's say, of renewals, of expansions, of new logos, etc. So then we talked about, okay, you work on the methodology, and the first one is prospecting, but then you have the deal qualification. Let's talk about MedPick. So what should I do? Should I call Andy White and say, I would like to have a training, all my team should be trained, and then they should come back and start to use the methodology? Or should I kind of customize, think about my ICP, etc., define it, do it internally, and go step by step?
Okay, so like, big fan of Andy White. So if you go with Andy White for your MedPick training, you're certainly not going to go wrong. But if you're actually looking to change the behaviors of your sales team, you need to do more than just bring in a really good trainer, right? So you need to have, well, we spoke about the tools that will back it up, but you also need to have like a change management process. And I would say that in that change management process, bringing in Andy White is probably, the third big step. I would say, first of all, you need to, understand what's going on in the organization. What are you currently doing? Where can you improve? And then, communicate in terms of, that this is going to happen. What is it specifically that we're looking for? Engage with Andy White, get him to do the training. He's going to do a great job, but then also, what are your processes and how are you going to make sure that what that best practice is, which I believe a medic or MedPick is absolutely best practice. How are you going to make sure that the team is actually going to continue applying that methodology so that ultimately the organization is getting the benefit of a best practice go-to-market methodology in terms of deal management. So really it's a process, and bringing in a really good trainer is a step in that process, Sami, but it's probably only 25% of actually managing that change within your organization.
Yeah, no, I've seen, I think, if I'm not wrong, that in general, you forget 86% of the training content within 12 weeks and 66% within 3 days. So I can understand that the training is really good, but it's not enough. I fully agree with you. And what's your point of view on the methodology's adoption? Like I've seen some statistics that, for example, on Miller Heiman, the adoption is around 19% rate. Mm-hmm. So do you think that the adoption is still low within the companies?
It's the adoption, and again, depends on the size of the organization and various other factors. But generally speaking, if you do not have management buy-in, so part of the process, the change management process, is actually coaching and training the managers. The adoption is always only going to be sort of in and around that Pareto rule, right? Of your top 20%, then applying it, because it, simply because it helps them win more business and drive revenue. And then the other 80% will be I'm not really seeing the value in it. I'm actually happy enough doing what I was doing. I'm actually just going to revert to type. The training was great, but that, for now, I'm actually good enough. And sometimes, depending on the organization, that can work to an extent, right? But I've spoken with a lot of organizations where at the start, there was massive scale, and in terms of even the closure rate, almost regardless of the salesperson, was always in and around 50%, and maybe the better people, it was slightly better. But eventually, right, your uniqueness starts to win. You get companies copying what you're doing. So that's where having those skills and those processes to make sure that your sales team is really performing at that Navy SEAL level or Jedi Knight level is really, really important. And that's where the adherence to the methodology is really, really important. And that has to be driven by the management team.
So a lot of methodology is focused on the sales motion, and it started with the solution selling, but then we moved to more value selling, provocative selling, and now we're seeing methodologies like the challenger sale that is growing dramatically. Mm-hmm. So all these were focusing on the sales part. And nowadays, the renewal and the expansion became even more important than the sales itself. So do you think that we need to apply different methodologies, or we keep the same methodology and apply it differently?
I would say, so we spoke about prospecting, right? So if you look at how, new business, typically it goes through various stages of a customer's buying cycle, and you need to make sure your sales process aligns with that. But really, in terms of new logo acquisition, that starts at a certain place with a certain process in relation to sales. If you then look at customer success is actually starting from a different place. So that initial kind of, so you're looking at landing and expanding, growing, making sure you get that extra stickiness within the business, extra, grow the average revenue for those businesses. And the actual process for growing is different in terms of in terms of prospecting. You're prospecting at both stages, but the actual the sales motion that you're using is very different. You probably the most effective way for customer success in my experience for growing the business is really by building your network and applying like best practice referral selling techniques within the business, right? So you can then expand based on the initial business unit that you're doing business with. They're already getting value, so you have that as a really powerful proof point. And then you just need to, and this is where a lot of salespeople I think fall short, is you need to proactively go after other similar executives that will also get similar value from what you offer within that larger, especially like if we're looking at customer success, that larger enterprise business.
That's clear. And now we talked about the initial phase of a startup. We talked about the scale and growth. Now let's talk about the enterprise, kind of growth to enterprise. So once I defined my methodology, how can I be sure that I have the right methodology? And should the methodology be static or should it evolve? And what's the timeline for this? Should I review my methodology every month, every week, every year?
Yeah, so in terms of your methodology, it's about getting into the data at a certain point, Sami. So it's about looking at in terms of where you're applying the methodology. So say it's at the discovery stage and you're getting a lot of success, right, in terms of moving from discovery to demo presentation stage. So if that's working very well and your methodology is built around that, well then you're good to go, right? For sure you can maybe always do some tweaking, but really where you see, when you look and you analyze the data, because it is about the data, and you see that there's a gap there, right? So for example, you're not getting the ratios that you were or that you believe you should have in terms of moving from that initial discovery and maybe some light articulation of the value that you can offer, that the customer actually goes, hey, I actually want to continue this journey with you onto that next stage. So again, often actually doubling down on the particularly at the discovery stage can really have an impact in terms of the ratios, from moving from one sales stage to the next. So I'm using as the example there, moving from a customer says, okay, let's go have a conversation about this. You go through the discovery, and for them to go, you know what, based on what you've shared, based on what you do, I believe that that it's actually worth continuing our journey. And the methodology, again, it's a process. So like, it doesn't matter whether you're in manufacturing or in sales. It's something, the whole advantage of having a process is something that can be tweaked and improved, or maybe it needs a complete overhaul. But if you don't have that, well then, where do you start, right? So that's why a good, solid sales methodology, our framework, our combination of both that works for your business, in my view, is really a must-have.
I fully agree. So to summarize, thank you, Gary. To summarize, what we've discussed about is, in fact, as a CRO, I know something is that starting from 10 million, I will need to start to think about methodologies. I will not reinvent the wheel, but I will take a proven methodology and I will customize it and adopt it. And I will start with the prospecting, then I do the deal qualification, the negotiation, etc. And then I will review my methodology depending on the data. So depending on the success, depending on how this part that we're covering with the methodology in the sales process is successful, whether it's successful or not. So Gary, what are your 3 top takeaways for this webinar? What would you like to communicate to our audience as a summary?
Okay, so to summarize, Sami, what I would say is that in terms of your methodology, you need a framework or a process to manage the what, in terms of what are the different elements that you need to manage as you take a deal through the process, but also the how, right? And when I say the how is how do you actually have a conversation with your customer that is going to get your differentiated solutions into your customer's required capabilities list, right? So that's the first one. The second point I would say is that you need to have a methodology that is not overly prescriptive but flexible enough to work with various customers that you're selling to, and various deal sizes, so be that sometimes a more complex one, it requires maybe a little bit more rigor, and a more transactional, straightforward one less so. And lastly, and for me, this is most important, right? Because and I say it might sound funny from coming from a trainer, but like, training is not the most important step in the process. The most important step for you to integrate best practice methodology or methodologies into your business is to make sure that you bake it into the tools that both your salespeople are using, as well as the senior leadership team. So they would be my 3 takeaways from our discussion today.
Thanks a lot, Gary. Thanks all of you for joining us. I think we tried to explore the ins and outs of the B2B sales methodologies, and probably touch a little bit about the exciting role of AI. I hope that you're walking away with valuable insights and practical tips, and feel free to reach out to Gary and I with any further questions. And here I wish you a consistent, repeatable win. And thank you very much. Until next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye, Sami. Bye, everybody.